Hello everyone, welcome to module 2 of operating system session 2. So in the previous session we have discussed on multi-threaded programming with what are the basic concepts of multi-threaded programming and also multi-threading models. So in this session we shall discuss and detailed the information on thread libraries and issues with respect to the threadings. So the next one is thread libraries. What actually the thread libraries provides? See, these are the libraries which provides an APIs to the programmer for creating and managing the threads. So there are two different major ways to implement these thread libraries. One is the first approach will be the thread library, which is entirely in the user space, which means that there will be no support from the kernel. So whatever the codes and the data structures for the library, all these will be exist in the user space. This is first one, which means that see, whenever you call a function or invoke a function in the library which acts as a local function call in the user space but not as your system call. This is with respect to the first one, means you are going to implement thread library in the user space. This is first one. What is the second approach here? Second approach, it is an implementing a kernel level library, which means which is supported directly by the operating system. So whatever the codes are there and the data structures are there for your library, all these will exist in the kernel space. So here, whenever you try to call a function or invoke a function in the APIs for the library, which means that it is act like your system call to the kernel. So these are the two different ways of implementing your thread libraries. So the next one is there are three main thread libraries which are commonly used. One is POSIX, pthread, Win32 and Java threads. So this POSIX, pthread, these are the threads which are extension of POSIX standards. See, these may be provided as either a user or kernel level libraries. The second one is your Win32 thread library, which is purely a kernel level library which is available on your Windows system. The third one is Java threads. So these Java thread APIs that will allow threads to create and manage directly in Java programs. So these are the three major thread libraries that we use. Next we shall see the first thread library, that is POSIX pthread. See, this POSIX pthread, which will be provided as either the user level thread or the kernel level thread, and POSIX standard API, which is mainly used or which is defining an API for thread creation and the synchronizations. And the APIs, this APIs specifies the behavior of the thread library, not with respect to the implementation. You remember this one. The implementation is left to the development of the library, or it is left to the programmer who develops this library. And these types of threads are commonly used in Unix operating systems, and some are the Solaris, Linux, Mac OS X, etc. Now let's see the C program which will demonstrate the basic pthread API for constructing a multi-threaded program that will calculates the summation of non-negative integer in a separate thread. So remember what this actually program will does. This program which will calculates the summation of a non-negative integers in a separate thread. So this pthread program which will separate the threads being execution in a specified function. So let's see the actual how does this C program works and how to initiate or initialize the new thread by using your main thread. So here this program starts with an header file called as pthread.h. What actually it does? This contains all the functions which are related to the thread creations and initialization of thread attributes and the data types with respect to the threads. So all the functions will be defined in this pthread.h, and this is your standard input output h. Two major functions are there. One is the main function and another is your void star, that is pointer runner function. So what actually it does? This runner function is like your called as a child thread and parent thread will be your main thread. So actually your program will start as a single thread with the main function, that is single thread of control from the main function, and after some initialization like your pthread thread id attributes of threads. So after this initialization the second thread will be created, that is called as a child thread. So this thread begins its execution. So after it completes its execution, again it gives the control to the parent thread. So parent thread will complete the entire execution process. So this is how it runs. So now let's start with the main function. In the main function there are actually two parameters are there. One is integer argument c, that is character, and argument v. So here why we need these two parameters need to be passed to this main function. Remember we are passing the inputs through command line. So how does it works? Command line. So it starts taking your input in the form of commands by storing or by giving the values, like assume that this program is a pthread.c. So this is your program. So whenever you run by using your any of the compiler like a GCC and all, how do you do? So you will run the program name by giving the name followed by the input to that program. Assume that you have given 5 as an input to this program. So what actually this program has to do? It has to sum, or it has to give the value of sum of all the 5 numbers. So how does it works? 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. So totally what is the value of this one? 15. So here this is the value it has to return. So this computation will be done in this function called as runner. So this is the entire thing that the operation will be done for this program. Here after this giving the values to your program, what actually argument vector contains? So this argument vector contains argument v of 0. In this position the file name will be contained, and in the argument v 1. What it contains? It contains the actual input to a program which specifies how many it gives that how many numbers need to be added or some summation of n numbers. So this is the input to your program. So that value is stored here. So in order to create a thread, what we need a thread ID, and along with that we need the attributes with respect to the thread. So what actually this thread attribute consists of? Remember, each thread has a set of attributes including your stack size and scheduling information. So that has been declared here. So the next one is if argument C, that is first parameter, if it is not equal to 2 arguments, if we do not give to the program, it has to return a standard error. Fine, this is one thing. Second condition is if a to I, that is whatever the values we give in the argument 1, what is the value here? We have given 5. So the input will be taken it as in the form of string. So that string has to be converted to your integer value. So in order to do that, we use the function called as ASCII to integer. So this function will convert that ASCII value to your integer value. If it is argument, if it is less than 0, means whatever value I have given, here I have given 5. If it is in the form of -1, -2, if it is less than 0, then again it has to return the error. So these are the two conditions. Next, here you can see the next statement called as pthread attribute initialization. So what actually it does? See, we are not explicitly setting any of the attributes. We are just using the default attributes which are provided to us. So the next one is pthread creation. So in order to create a thread, we are using pthread -create followed by the parameters. What are the parameters that we are passing to this function? The thread ID, thread attributes, and runner. It is a function, or you can call it as your child thread, that what we are actually creating. So the next one is argument v vector of 1. What actually it stores? As I said, that it consists of the value called as 5. So these are the values which are passed to the function called as pthread create. So right now at this point, how many threads are there in a program? There are 2 threads are there. One is the initial, or we can call it as a parent thread in your main function, and the summation, which is called as a child thread, performing your summation operation in the runner function. So after creating the summation thread, the parent thread has to wait for your child thread to complete its execution by calling your function called as pthread_join function, which means that after the completion of your execution of this runner, what it does, it calls the function called as pthread_exit, which means that the child thread has been exited, means it is completed its work, and the control is given to back to the main function. So once the summation thread has written, the parent thread will output the value of shared data, that is sum. So this is how it works. Now let's see another example with respect to the thread called as Win32 threads. So here the technique whatever we use for creating the thread using the Win32 thread library, which is similar to your previous technique. You can see this program here. In this program, the first difference is we have seen in pthread, that is, what is the header file we have used? We have used pthread.h, but whereas in Windows, that is in Win32 thread, we use windows.h. This is the first thing. Second one is your, remember, we have used sum, which is globally declared, which is shared by your parent thread and also with the child thread. Similarly, we are using the same variable that is declared globally, and the data type is dword. So this data type is unsigned 32-bit integer. And also you can see we have defined a summation function. Remember this one, summation function. What actually it does, that is used to perform your summation operation as a separate thread. This function is passed a pointer to a void, in which Win32 defined as LP void. So whatever the thread which is performing this operation, which sets a global data, that is sum, to the value of the summation from 0 to n value. Okay. So here another major thing is we need to understand that in pthread, that is in POSIX pthread, what function we have used to create threads, that is pthread_create. But whereas in Windows, that is in Win32 API, we are using create thread function. So here we are using create thread function. So this is one of the major difference. So we need to set an attributes for the thread to pass some of the parameters to the function. Okay, so these attributes includes the security information, and the next one is the size of the stack, and the flag that can be set to indicate if the thread is to start in a suspended state or not. Calling the thread function and the parameter through the thread function, and default creation flag is 0, and along with that thread ID. So these are all the parameters that we need to pass in order to create your thread. So as discussed in the previous program, similarly we need to have the thread ID, which is a type of a dword, and also we are using another variable called as integer param. So if anyhow you know that we are using command line prompt, so we are passing the file name along with the input to your file. Assume that if your file name is win32.c and followed by the number or the input if it is a number 5. So these are the command line inputs that what we are giving to this program. The first one is your win32.c. second one is how many numbers need to be added from 1 to 5. So if the argument c, if it is not equals to 2, means if it is 1 or greater than 2, then it has to give an standard error. Again we have to check that or we are converting a to I, that is ASCII value to integer, and that value is stored as param. So if param is less than 0, means if we are giving a negative integer, that is -1, -2 or any other value, then it will give the standard error saying that an integer should be greater than or equal to 0. So these are all the basic thing that with respect to the program. Second one, next part is with respect to the creating of thread. How do you create a thread? The thread is created by calling a function called as create thread along with some of the parameters. So once this thread is created, so the control will pass to your summation function. The summation function, what it does, it will perform the operation, that is summing of all n integer values. Assume that I have given as a 5, so 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, the value will be 15. So this value is returned as sum. So once this thread, that is your child thread, completes its execution, the control is given to your main program. So in the previous, what we have done, you know that in the P thread, once the thread is given to the, or control is given to the child thread, your parent thread has to wait until your child thread exits. So for that, what is the statement we have given? Pthread underscore join, that is the function we have used. Similarly, here we are using wait for a single object. So actually the wait for single object function, which will cause the creating thread to block until the summation thread has exited. So once it is done, it will print here some value and it will complete its execution. So remember, one thing is we have two threads. One is with respect to the main thread, that is which is called as a parent thread, and another is your child thread. Child thread, how do you create? By creating a by calling a function called as create thread. So this is how with respect to the Win32. So the next library is your Java threads. So these threads are the fundamental models of your program execution in the Java program. And remember one thing, this Java language and its APIs will provide you the rich set of features for the thread creation and management. And the Java threads are mainly are managed by the Java Virtual Machines, that is JVM. And these are typically implemented using the thread models provided by the operating system. And all the Java program consists of at least one single thread of control. That is, even if you take a very simple Java program, in that Java program it consists of main method to run as a single thread in the JVM. So there are two techniques for creating your threads in the Java program. The first method is here creating a new class that is derived from the thread class and to override its run method. This is your first one. Second one is you have to define a class that implements the runnable interface. So the runnable interface, which is defined like this. So whenever the class implements runnable, it must define the run method. So the code which is implementing the run method, this is what actually runs as a your separate thread. So we shall see the Java program, which is a multi-threaded program that determines the summation of a non-negative integers. Here the class called as a driver, which consists of the main function, and another class is a summation, which implements actually a runnable interface, and another class called as your sum. So here we shall start with the first one. Here, if the argument length is greater than 0, yes, that is argument string dot length. If it is greater than 0, then it enters this loop. Again it check the condition whether the argument string, if it is greater than or less than 0 or not. If it is less than 0, which means that we are giving input in the form of negative integers, so it will check that. If it is less than 0, then again it will come out of from this entire program. If it is false, then only this else part will execute. Here you can see this one, the summation class actually implements the runnable interface. So how actually the threads are created? The threads are created by an object called as a thread class, or we can say that creating an object instance of a thread class and passing the constructor a runnable object. So that is one thing. See, creating an object, actually you are not creating a thread. Instead, actually it is a method called as a start method. So that creates a new thread. So calling the start method for a new object, it will do two things. What actually that? One is it allocates the memory and initialize a new thread in the JVM. Remember this one. It will allocate the memory and initialize. So these are the two things. Second one is it calls the run method, making the thread eligible to run by the JVM. So these are the two things. So when the summation program runs, actually two threads are created by the JVM. The first one is your parent thread, that is in the main method. You can see here in the main method. And second one is a thread which is created when you method is start, or we can say that when the start method on the thread object is invoked. You can see here. So this is the two threads which are being there. One is the parent, another is child. So the child thread will begin the execution in the run method of your summation class. So actually this function will perform your actual summation of n values. So after sending the output, the value of summation, this thread will be terminated when it exits from its run method. So this is one thing. And very important thing is, see, we have seen how the data has been shared in pthreads and also in Win32. Means we have declared a variable called as a sum globally, where that value has been shared by the functions, either in maybe the summation function and the main function. But whereas in the object oriented language, that is Java, does not have such notation of your global data. That is, if two or more threads are to be shared some data in your Java program, that sharing occurs by passing the reference to the shared object to the appropriate threads. So you can see this in the program. In the main thread and the summation thread, they shares the object instance of sum class. What actually it shares? It shares the sum class. So this shared object is reference to the appropriate functions called as getSum and your setSum methods. So you may ask one important question, that is, sir, why you cannot use the integer object instead of creating a new sum class? So the major thing is the integer class is immutable. That is immutable, which means that once the values are set, you cannot change it. So this is the with respect to the sharing of the data between your threads. The next important point is you have seen the in the pthread and also Win32 that whenever we call, or whenever the child thread starts its execution in the pthread, we call a function called as a pthread underscore join method, and in the Win32 we call a function called as a wait for single object function. What actually those two will do? Those will use to wait for the summation thread to finish its execution. So the similar way here, we use a join function or method to provide the same functionality. So this is all about your Java thread. So we have discussed three major threads. One is your P threads, that is POSIX thread, and another is Win32 thread, which is mainly used in Windows, and next one is your Java threads. So let's discuss the next topic, that is threading issues. So in this topic, we shall discuss some of the issues that need to be considered with the multi-threaded programs. The first one is your fork and execute system call, thread cancellation, signal handling, threads pool, thread specific data, and scheduler activation. So we'll discuss one by one. So the first one is your fork and execute system call. So the first one is the fork is which is a system call which is used to create a separate and duplicate process. So the meaning or the semantics of these system calls changes in the multi-threaded program when it compares to your actual process creations. So some of the Unix systems have chosen the two versions of your fork system call. That is, some systems duplicates all the threads, and another systems may duplicate only the thread that invokes the fork system calls. If a thread invokes execute system call, which means that the program specified in the parameter to execute system call will replace the entire process, including the all threads. So the next issue is your thread cancellation. So what actually the thread cancellation means? It is a task of terminating a thread before it has completed. Assume that you have assigned some task, so you want to terminate that thread in between without completing its task. So that process is called as terminating a thread. So, or we can call it as a thread cancellation. So there are different example or multiple examples are there. One of the example is your searching through your database. Assume that you are searching some keywords in your database. So one thread, there might be multiple threads that working on searching of this key. So any one of the thread which returns the result, any one of the thread, assume that thread number 1, thread number 2, and thread number 3, which are working on your searching of key. If thread number 1 finds the solution, and if it returns the result that we are searching for that, so remaining 2 threads will be terminated. Means these remaining threads might be cancelled. So this is one thing. Second one is your web browser. So in the web browser, you have seen that there are multiple items are there where you will, or if you want to load your web page, there are multiple threads are there. Those threads will handle different tasks. So assume that one thread is used to load your images, one thread is used to load your sound, another thread might be used to load your text. Assume that 3 threads are working on loading of your page. So if you press your stop button here, or if you press the cross mark at the top rightmost button, if you press that on the browser, so all the threads which are meant for loading the web page which are cancelled. so which will be cancelled. So these are the two examples of your thread cancellation. So there is another important term is called, that is target thread. So what actually it means? A thread that is to be cancelled, that is called as your target thread. So cancellation of thread or what we say that cancellation of target thread can be done in two different cases or scenarios. One is your asynchronous cancellation and second one is deferred cancellation. What do you mean by asynchronous? That is, one thread immediately terminates your target thread. So second one is, there is a target thread which periodically check whether it should be terminated or it should continue its operation. That is, so there are thread cancellation can occur in two different cases, that what we have seen. So but the difficulties with the cancellations occurs in some situations. So situations might be, assume that you have allocated the resources for one of the thread, so you want to cancel the thread. That is one situation. Or the thread which need to be cancelled in the midst of you are updating the data, so that thread is sharing with the another thread. So if you cancel that, the operating system will reclaim your system resource from the cancelled thread, but not reclaim all the resources which have been shared with the other threads. So cancelling a thread asynchronously may not free a necessary system-wide resources. This is one of the difficult situation with your asynchronous. Second one is deferred cancellation. Deferred cancellation in the sense, so one thread which will indicate a target thread that is to be cancelled, but remember, cancellation occurs only when or only after the target thread has been checked a flag whether it has to be cancelled or not. So the next one is your signal handling. So what is a signal? See, remember, a signal is used to notify a process that some particular event has occurred. So this signal may be received either synchronously or asynchronously, depending upon the source of and the reason for the event being signaled. So irrespective of whether the signal is your asynchronous signal or synchronous signal, there is some pattern that need to be followed. What is that pattern here? These are the three steps. See, the first thing is, whenever a signal is generated, when the signal is generated by the occurrence of particular event, this is the first step. Second one is, once the signal is generated, it has to deliver to the process. So once it is being delivered to the process, that signal has to be or it must be handled. So this is the pattern of your signal handling. Let's see the example with respect to the signal handling. The first one is synchronous signals. So what actually it means that, so the signals are delivered to the same process that perform the operation causing the signal, which means that, assume that there is one program which is running in process P1. So that program, during the execution of this program, it may faces some of the actions like illegal memory access or your division by 0. So because of this, the signals are generated. Which process has generated? Process P1 has generated this signal. So if the signals are delivered to the same process, if the signals are delivered to the same process that performed the operation that caused the signal, it is called as a synchronous signal. This is the first one. Second one is asynchronous. Asynchronous in the sense, when a signal is generated by an event external to the running process, so that process receives the signals asynchronously. One of the examples is user terminating a process with specific key stroke, that is pressing the keys like a Control C. So let's see how these signals might be handled. There are two different possible handlers are there. One is your default signal handler and second one is user defined signal handler. See, whenever the signal has been generated, every signal has a default signal handler which is run by your kernel or while handling that signal. Second one is the user defined signal handler that is used to handle the signals which is which is overtaken by your default signal handler. So again, these signals are handled in different ways. The one of the thing is some signals are simply ignored, that is without doing anything. So that is the first one. Second one is which are handled by terminating that program. One of the example is illegal memory access. So these are the two different possible handles. This next one is when you have a single threaded program, delivering a signal to the process is a simple and a straightforward. So in a multi-threaded programs, delivering a signal is more complicated in the multi-threaded because a process may have multiple threads over there. So whenever the signals need to be delivered, there are some possible options are there. One is deliver the signal to the thread to which that signal applies. Second one is deliver the signal to every thread in the process. Next one is deliver the signal to certain threads in a process. The last one is assign a specific thread to receive all the signals for the process. So these are all the following options where the signal has to be delivered with respect to the multi-threaded programs. So the method for delivering a signal, which mainly depends upon the type of the signal generated, whether it is a synchronous signal or asynchronous signal. This is with respect to the signal handling. So the next one is thread pool. So before discussing what actually the thread pool is, we shall discuss some of the issues with respect to the web server. So how does actually web server works? Web server means whenever the clients request for a service to the web server will create a thread, and that thread will give the service to the client's request, and once it is done, the threads are terminated. So here there are two important issues are there. One is whenever the thread is created, means the amount of time required to create the thread prior to the servicing the request is the concern. The second one is if we are allowed all the requests which is generated by the client concurrently to be serviced in the new thread, we have not placed a bound on the number of threads concurrently active in the system. So ultimately the thread will exhaust the system resource, such as there are some resources such as like your CPU time or memory. So this is one of the biggest issue. What is the solution for this one is the thread pool. So what is the major general idea behind the thread pool is you are going to create a number of threads at a process startup. During the process startup itself, you are creating the some number of threads in that one. So once the threads are created, you place all the threads in a pool where they sit and wait for the work. So we shall see that procedure behind this one. The first one is when a server receives a request, it awakens a thread from the pool. Assume that you have a pool in that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have n number of pools, n number of threads. So whenever a server receives a request, it picks one of the thread from the pool. Assume that thread number 1 has been taken from this pool. So if any threads is available, the request is passed to for its service. Yes, assume that thread number 1 is available and it is ready to serve the request which is generated by your clients. So once the service is completed, the third step, the thread returns to the same pool, means it has been taken for the performing some of the actions. Once it is done, again it is sent back to the pool. So this is the procedure. What is the last step is, if the pool contains threads which are not available to provide the service. Assume that there are n threads are there, all the threads are busy right now. There are no threads which will be available free for giving the service to the client's request. So the service or the server has to wait until any one of the threads become free. This is the procedure behind your thread pool. So but thread pools have some of the benefits. Let's see that one. The first benefit is servicing a request with an existing thread is usually faster than waiting for creating a thread. So this is your first benefit. Second one is, a thread pool limits the number of threads that exist at any one point. See, this is very important on systems that cannot support large number of concurrent threads. These are the two benefits with respect to the thread pool. So on what basis you people are going to create the threads in a pool, or you are going to set how many number of threads should be there in a pool? So these mainly based upon the some of the factors. One of the thing is the number of CPUs, the amount of physical memory, and the next one is the expected number of concurrent clients request. So these are the some of the factors on which the threads are being placed in your pools. So the next one is, let's see the fifth issue, that is thread specific data. So remember that whenever you have multiple threads, there are some benefits are there and also some of the disadvantages are also there. So the threads belongs to the same process that will share the data of that process. So this sharing of the data provides one of the benefits of multi-threaded programming. But there are some situations are there where each thread might need its own copy of certain data. That data is called as thread specific data. So one of the example is in your transaction processing systems, where each service or each transaction is executed or serviced in a separate thread, because each transaction might be assigned a unique identifier. So this is with respect to your thread specific data. And the last one is scheduler activity. This issue, which is mainly considered with the multi-threaded programs, concern communication between the kernel and the thread library. So there is an important data structure which is called as your lightweight process, where actually it is, see, this comes into the picture while implementing some of the models like your many-to-many or two-level models. So while implementing this LWP will comes into the picture, and it is a data structure between the user thread and the kernel thread. So what actually it does, so this LWP, which actually appears as your virtual processor on which the application can schedule a user thread that can be run. So there are some situations are there where if you block a kernel, this LWP will also block. There are some applications are there whenever you run that application may require number of LWPs for your efficiency or to run effectively. This is one thing. Assume that you have an application which is a CPU bounded application. That application which is running on your single process. When that is the situation, one thread is enough for us to run that process, that application successfully. So how many LWPs is needed? One LWP is sufficient. There are some of the application that is IO intensive. So that may require multiple lightweight processor to execute that IO operations. So let's consider one example, that is you have 5 different file read requests which occurs simultaneously. So at that time, how many LWPs you needed? You need 5 LWPs are needed, because all could be waiting for IO completion in the kernel. So assume that if you have only, or if a process has only 4 LWPs, then the 5th request must wait for another LWP to return from the kernel. So this is with respect to the LWPs. So there is a communication, there is one scheme between the user thread and the kernel, which is known as scheduler activation. So this completes session 2. Thank you so much.